Hi students, it's Dr. Newmark here. I'm recording a little video to go through all of your questions about the final project that you posted to the Padlet. I thought this was the most efficient way to do it rather than just respond to each one. So I'm going to give you some examples in this video of ways that you might go about this assignment. But first of all, let's look at the assignment quickly here. So your final project will be a visually interesting, think a brochure, an infographic, or rich media, think a website or YouTube video output that aims to connect 3 visual rhetoric theories or discussions from our course to an applied work in your chosen profession. Whatever medium you choose, you will create something you could deliver to a professional organization, distribute at a conference, blah, 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 use in the workplace. You're trying to encourage your colleagues or people in your professional community to improve their visual rhetorical tactics. And you're going to give them pointers because you are armed with all of this insight gained through this class, hopefully. So if we look at the Padlet, I've got to move my little window here, we see several questions about the reflection, what it means to provide evidence of learning. So I'll come back to that after I talk about the assignment itself. So Busy Hummingbird here says, if we choose something with pre-existing branding, are we expected to follow along with those? Are we allowed to change it into our own? You know, I've talked about Kone a lot. You know, IKEA is another company that they have pretty robust and distinctive branding. You can, I would suggest trying to reflect some of those themes, but you don't have at your disposal the whole apparatus of the design assets that the company uses. So all you can do is do your best, but I wouldn't go in a totally different direction if you can help it. And so this next person said, is the profession expected to link to technical communication? How tightly is the idea of a profession limited? Even though you're studying technical and professional communication, most likely languages, linguistics, if that is not the industry that you're planning on going into, let's say you're going into medical editing or I don't know, the public relations field or advertising or marketing, it doesn't necessarily have to be tightly linked to technical communication like you're writing software documentation for a telecom company. So I will accept some liberal interpretations of what the prospective career path you might take will be. If you're in a totally different field, like you're going to become a veterinarian, fine. If you're going to try to help veterinarians better create impactful visual communications, then do that. But make sure that your profession is kind of clearly articulated or evident, needs to be evident to me somehow through whatever it is that you choose to create. So the target audience, does it have to be people working in tech com or can it be some other field? I think I answered that sort of clumsily in the last answer, but it can be some other field, but it has to be a distinct field. This is not generalized because, as I've said many times, effective technical communication outputs have to be designed for a particular audience and to fulfill a particular purpose. So you have to understand who your audience is in order to even be able to do this well. So this awesome owl says, can I have practical examples on what the result of this project should look like? What does applied work in your chosen profession mean? Well, unfortunately, I don't have any examples from previous students of what this looks like, but I'm going to walk you through a few ideas in a minute, so hopefully that will help. Applied work in a chosen profession would be something that is customarily produced in that profession. So we've used the IKEA example a ton. You know, they're always producing these leaflets that go with their products in order to help people construct them. So that would be applied work in that profession. I have a few examples that I'll show you that also would be applied to certain professions. So possible audience, this person says engineering colleagues who work in a technical writing e-learning team producing content. That would be great. Like if you've looked at their existing content and you think that its visual design could be improved, this would be a great opportunity to indicate certain places where it could be improved on the as a result of some of the techniques you've learned this semester. This person says, I was thinking I could do some kind of infographic explaining why and how to use different kinds of design principles when making visuals for some kind of company. That would be excellent. That's a really great idea. Can it be like a presentation in a professional trade fair, central platform kind of situation? I would say yes. Like you could even imagine this like you were giving a poster presentation at a conference that was specifically designed to improve the visual or design elements that people use in this particular industry, and you're presenting on that to give advice on that. Or like sometimes people call it a leave behind. They do that often in a political context. To legislators, if you're part of a particular interest group, you design a flyer or a one-page informational document and you leave it behind at like a city council meeting or something like that. So that's another modality that you could use. And then this question has to do with narrowing down the audience, your target audience. I mean, that's really for you to determine. You have to sort of think pretty carefully about what a particular discourse community would be. I've given some examples already, but I think the examples I'm about to show will help that as well. Okay, but about the reflection. So the reflection should be, 200 words is generally a double-spaced one-page document. I want about 2 of those. So let's think about 400 words. So between 200 to 400 words. I recommend you format it as a memorandum. If you're not familiar with the memorandum format, do look it up online. It's a pretty customary genre. Now, in terms of providing evidence of your learning, you need to go back to the course syllabus and look up the learning outcomes. So if we look here at the assignment, I say, you need to provide evidence of your learning and insights into your learning, return to the course syllabus and review the course goals, not the outcomes. So they're articulated in 2 different ways here. So if you go back to the beginning of the course syllabus and course calendar, be sure that you discuss how you achieved the course goals and work towards them. So what we look for in a reflection memorandum in terms of evidence of learning is, you would say, in my final output, let's say you create a YouTube video, I provided, well, let's go back to the course syllabus here, and then we can, I don't know if this is going to pull up here. Let's see. All right, so here we are. These are the goals right here at the top. Create a multimodal visual rhetoric portfolio with substantive analysis. Compose a final course project that harmonizes theory and practice of visual rhetoric to be completed in a medium of your choice, and deliver one in-class presentation. So you know what? I'm going to walk this back, actually. It is the objectives, because I think in the class that I taught before, I had different goals and objectives. So I'll change the wording in the assignment. So I apologize for not noticing this before. I'm just recording this on the fly and I'm not going to edit it down. So I'll change this in the assignment. So it is the objectives. So you need to demonstrate that you've developed a vocabulary for discussing and analyzing the visual aspects of documents and static images and online communications, recognize the political and rhetorical force conveyed by visual presentations, identify and analyze the audience, and create visually effective documents and graphics intended for specific technical and professional audiences. So what you would do in your memo is you would say, I have learned how to identify and analyze the audience targeted by a particular visual presentation. For example, in this particular output, it is specifically designed for members of the veterinarian community because I use appropriate vocabulary for the kinds of outputs they typically create. You would have to know what those outputs are, and then maybe you would use certain kinds of semiotic signs that were effective for that particular audience. If you are working on a newsletter in an engineering context, you would say this is a customary genre within this organization, and I know that. So you would be able to identify those audience needs and analyze what their what their particular requirements are. So you need to name the objective and provide an example of how you fulfilled that. So that is what I mean in the assignment for the reflection component, to provide evidence of your learning. The more specific the piece of evidence, the better an articulation it is of your learning. So, I guess I made some balloons go off by doing that with my fingers. But so that's called metacognitive reflection, when you're connecting the thing that you did, the output, to the concept, which is, these are the concepts, the objectives. And so you're connecting them by explaining how you did that, how you achieved that. So the process of explaining helps to form those neural pathways of learning. And it's supposedly, per research, it enables you to sustain that learning over time. Okay. This video has already been very long, so I'm going to jump into the examples that I have for you today. Okay, so this first one I actually saw yesterday at the Verstas Labor Museum, so I hope you can still see this in the video, but this is a little like a little flyer that has to do with putting an ear protection on a work site. So actually, this is a pretty well-designed little brochure. But what you might want to do in your output is use something like Adobe Express or Canva, and you can do all kinds of fun things with it. Let's say you were making a flyer. You could include that image on a flyer and annotate it to indicate where it might be improved. So the one that I just showed you is already pretty good, but if you found one that you think could be improved for that particular discourse community, you would indicate with arrows or shapes or commentary on it, not too much, but you would express how it could be improved in terms of its rhetorical impact, whether that's through an improvement of the use of semiotic signs or whether it's something to do with the adjustment of its actual design per the design principles or something else, using any of the other theories or more instructional kinds of readings that you read this semester. So you would annotate something that existed already. That's one option that you could do. So I pulled as a few other examples these newsletters that are produced by the national laboratories in the US. A lot of my students end up going to work for the national laboratories. This would be in a more professional writing role because they're not doing necessarily anything technical here by working with the engineers and scientists, although students do that too. But in this case, Sandia National Laboratories produces a monthly newsletter dealing with some pretty serious scientific and like nuclear safety sorts of topics. So let's say you were providing guidance for Sandia National Laboratories on improving the rhetoricity of this visual output. You don't necessarily have to include a screenshot of the newsletter as it exists, but you could if you wanted to annotate it like I explained in the previous example. But let's say you were going to just produce a YouTube video that was a brief, 3 to 5 minute crash course in how to effectively design a national laboratory newsletter. Let's say you were going to do that for VTT, which is the Research Center of Finland, or for a particular lab or research group at Tampere University. So you could pick whoever you wanted to do it for, and you would be providing them some feedback and some instructions on how they could improve the visual elements or their usage of visual elements in their outputs. So here's one more example. This comes from the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, which is another national laboratory in the United States. This is their news feed, and it's actually, I think, pretty poorly designed as a website. It is I don't want to say disaster, but it does not use the page space, the real estate of this website in a very sensible way. There's a lot of wasted space. The way that the eye tracks across the page is not very effectively done. Anyway, so there might be a lot of room for improvement on this as a medium through which they are communicating about the research and innovations at this national laboratory with the public. So you might provide the team that works on this content with a quick guide. It could be a one-page brochure, like a little handout that you could circulate, or you might design a PowerPoint for them, or a video, or another medium that you think would work well for this. So those are the examples that I have for you today, because you have a whole lot of options here. As I say, a brochure, an infographic, a website, or a YouTube video, something that you're going to do to connect your gained knowledge that you've gained in this class with providing information to a certain population about how they can improve their outputs. As I say in the assignment, you have to, in your actual output, signal that your learning is coming from certain theoretical or more applied texts from our class. You definitely need to do that. If you're doing like an infographic, you might quote from some of the resources that we read in a brief and accessible way, but then you would develop that more in your 200 to 400 word reflection memorandum. So I say that here. That was another question from a student. What does this last sentence mean? There was a typo in here, but I changed it. So in the memo, you need to develop your use of your scholarly sources in this reflection memo. Since you don't have the appropriate context in the output itself to develop your theory for how you use them, it wouldn't be appropriate in your YouTube video or your one-pager to like really dig into indexical signs. That wouldn't make sense. Or the principle of repetition. You would do that more in the reflection memo, so you can prove to me that you understand that concept. Okay, so I hope this has helped and that I've answered all your questions from the Padlet, and I will see you in class. And please email me if you have any questions. All right, bye.